Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Lose the Veil. My name is Leslie Brown, and I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Solar.
Hello, this is Gene. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Soli.
This is Bonnie.
We have a guest speaker today. Her name is Lynda Day, Professor Lynda Day, and I'm just going to ask her to just briefly tell us a little bit about herself and some of the things that she knows about in terms of the feminine energy or the female energy.
Hi, everybody. I was interested in the women of Africa from a long time ago. And at Howard, I studied African history and histories of other countries. And I wanted to get a PhD in African history. So I went to the University of Wisconsin to do that. While there, my first few years, I was just reading general histories. And when it came to Sierra Leone, I kept coming up with these mentions of duchesses, madams, women chiefs, queens, and that didn't fit what I had been hearing, what I had grown up thinking, that women in Africa were oppressed, beasts of burden, etc. It didn't match. So I wanted to investigate that further. So I went to Sierra Leone for my graduate research to study the women chiefs of Sierra Leone. So I stayed with one and visited and interviewed many others. And in Sierra Leone, about 10% of the paramount chiefs are women and have been for a couple of 100 years. So that's a topic that fascinated me. And when I stayed with one woman chief who was really a very interesting, warm, but tough lady that was beloved by the people of her chiefdom, it was absolutely fascinating and wonderful for me to observe her work, observe her life in the year that I was there as a graduate student doing my research. So I wrote my dissertation on the women chiefs of Sierra Leone, and then I turned that into a book which came out in 2012 called Gender and Power, The Women Chiefs of Sierra Leone, the Last 200 Years. Since then, I got very interested also in the women of Ghana. So I spent a year in Ghana as a professor at the University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana, and studied the woman who led the Ashanti people to rebel against the British, Yasantiwa, in 1900. She led the last war of the Ashanti people in their fight for independence from the British. And of course, the idea that there was a woman who was leading an army, I thought that was amazing. And she is considered a national hero of Ghana. So I wrote a very extensive article doing research on her life and her struggle. So I am also considered an expert on Yasantiwa's story as well as the women chiefs of Sierra Leone.
That's amazing background. Now, what I'm interested in also is hearing what was different about what we've been taught about what Africa was, and your stay with these women who were chieftain and who were powerful. What were some of the things that you noticed about them?
Well, one of the things that I sometimes mention in my introduction to my book is the fact that the women organize the markets. They are in charge of the market, and so they have a lot of money. The women in the market are carrying fistfuls of money, and they control the marketing of fabric, especially cloth, which is very important for symbolic reasons, as well as, of course, people, what they wear. Mm-hmm. But markets are controlled by women. So when you go to any West African market, it's a woman's space. And they have money which they can lend to people who work for them. Yes. And in Sierra Leone, as well as other places in West Africa, the women also control the regional markets in certain other goods like fish, dried fish especially, and sometimes fresh fish. They can hire trucks to transport their goods to other parts, and then they are in charge of that particular regional enterprise. When it comes to international, interestingly enough, I find a lot of African women are doing that too. They're buying and selling import, export. especially again of cloth, but other goods. These days, may I say, one of the things that's being imported and exported, hair, big import-export item. But if you get on a plane going to West Africa, you'll see the women who have bags and bags and bags of things that they're taking to sell. So they are doing import-export internationally now, as well as when they used to and still do regionally, where they are buying and selling food, clothing, and all kinds of other goods in the markets.
Wow.
They also control the markets. That's one thing that no one would have, I didn't know before going there, the extent to which they hold on to a lot of the cash. So a lot of the economy, especially on a local level, goes through them. Now, they have a lot of competition from like Syrian, Lebanese, foreign businessmen are controlling a lot of things like electronics and cars. They don't control that. But when it comes to food, clothing, and some other items, fish, they control those markets and exchanges. I didn't know that either.
Wow, that's very interesting. What about the relationships in with the chieftains? How did they commune or rule their spaces? How was that working out? How did that work?
Okay, so the lady that I stayed with, her nickname is Mama, which means grandmother in that language. So she became the chief when she was like 25, and by the time I got there, she was like 45. But she was referred to as grandmother by everybody, even though she doesn't actually have she did not have any biological children of her own, but all the people of her household and of the town are like considered her children, even though they're her biological children. And in her case too, she was married to another chief, and he was polygamous. He had a lot of wives. And so some of his wives would come to live at her house for training. Like she would watch over them and watch over their children by him. She was also their mother or their grandmother, if you will. And I did think that was fascinating, that she had a husband who himself had other wives. She was considered the senior wife, even though she wasn't the oldest wife, but she was the most powerful woman of all of his wives. And I do remember being there at the house when he would visit, because he'd visitants like stay over every once in a while. And everybody got very excited because Chief Dabo was coming. He's going to stay over with Madame. So they made this big meals and cooked for her and cooked for him. And they cleaned up the house, and the place was very nice. It was like they were on like a date, like a honeymoon or something for the weekend when he would come to visit her. But he didn't live there. It was her house. It was her town, her compound, her everything. But he would come and visit. So even when he came to visit, he wasn't in charge. Certainly not by that point. He was not in charge of her. So in that regard, they were kind of like partners.
That sounds a little interesting to me. If she was really the chief of the place, so he was her husband, he was chief, but he didn't have any real power. He could just go and have more wives, but she was the one with the power over everything.
In her town. Now he had his own town. He had his own chiefdom. Chief Dabo was chief of another place.
Okay. All right.
But not of her town.
Wow. That's so interesting.
So I haven't started talking yet about the secret societies. In this place, they have secret societies in Sierra Leone, women's society and men's society. And boys are initiated into the men's society, and girls are initiated into the women's society. And men aren't supposed to go into their area or have anything to do with them when they're in their meetings or they're having their initiations. It's not for men, and vice versa. So they have, in that respect, a kind of a cosmological and spiritual complementarity of the genders, which I found fascinating too. And at least on this theoretical basis, the women's area is forbidden to men and the men's area is forbidden to women. And the idea is that if any man comes in contact with the women's ritual substances, they will be rendered infertile, and the same way for women. If a woman comes in contact with and touches male ritual substances, she will be rendered infertile.
Wow.
So the women's society is considered, though, to be over the other women. Like they report to the hierarchy of the women's society. I might mention something that I saw myself with my own eyes.
Mhm.
I was coming into this town in a taxi, and as I came into the town, I heard this sound. It sounded like thunder, sounded like rumbling, boom, 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 boom. And I was like, what's going on? So the taxi said, you want to see? I'll take you over there to where it's happening. So he took me to the center of the town where they have, where the courthouse area is, and they have an open structure, which is like where people meet for court cases and things like that. It's like an open, almost like a gazebo, but bigger than a gazebo.
Mhm.
So there were all of these young girls there, like about a couple of hundred young girls who were stamping and shouting and singing and dancing, like just like, I don't know, they look like in a movie about the Native Americans when they're getting ready to go to war, dancing and pounding and shouting. And so but in the meantime, there were these older women who were kind of walking around the perimeter wearing their gowns, quietly chatting with each other, while these young girls were like going crazy in the open space. And they said that the court clerk had insulted the women. So the women's society heads had sent out the call that they're going to take the court clerk to the bundu bush, as they call it, their secret enclosure, and castrate him.
Ooh.
So he barricaded himself into the office, and with another couple of policemen, they were barricaded inside the office to protect them from these girls, because the girls were out there to obey the law. That the women had told them to get these men out and drag them into the secret society bush for castration. So that was, I mean, I didn't stay till the end, but in this kind of situation, somebody was going to come and like get the men to pay a fine or something, to settle the issue. Because that didn't really happen too often, of them actually castrating people, because that would be against the state law. But that was the fear. And that was according to their own social mores, that would have been their right to do that, because of the insults that he had launched against the women. Wow. Especially like if a man insults like a woman's genitals, the body parts, they like insult their vagina or something, that was considered an insult to all the women. Yeah. And he would be subject to the penalties of the women's society for doing that. Wow. Do you think it's still like that now? I mean, they still operate on those parameters now? That was in the early 80s. It's not like it was in the 1900s. No, well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, no, okay. I get you. But because we have so much more information now and ways of looking at how Africa has grown, so I just was wondering, when were you there last, and did you find any differences in the way it was when you went in the 80s and how it is now? Well, certainly there are more girls that go to school now than ever. Mm-hmm. People do see that it's a good idea for their girls. When I say go to school, like high school, graduate from high school. Mm-hmm. So that does change the dynamics of a lot of things, because if they get high school diploma, then they go get jobs, maybe in the city. So that does change things, because these rules are definitely more in place in rural areas than in urban areas. Right. And there has been increasing urbanization. Wow. I might move on to matrilineal societies like Ghana, where they trace the inheritance and the family line through women. And that sets up certain structures that are different from Sierra Leone case. Okay. But the Akan people of Ghana are matrilineal. So in every town, the clan, the people of the town are all tracing their heritage through a woman. So a woman represents the actual clan in every town. So those women are usually, in English, they call them queen mothers. So every town and the nation, the Asante nation, has a queen mother, and those are considered really, really important people. There's rituals that they perform that only they can perform. They're the ones who finally approve who the man ruler will be. The queen mother has to approve him. And I'm trying to think. Generally speaking, the queen mothers are considered to be, again, like in charge of women's affairs, women's issues. Yeah, but I think they also have spiritual responsibilities. They pour libation on special occasions. Every month, rituals for the ancestors. The queen mother has to do that. So the queen mothers of all these towns are essential to the smooth running of the town.
I find that fascinating. I find that so fascinating because it's a culture that we have had absolutely no idea living here in America, that the women had such power and such command and such money and such. Here is just so different. And that was one of the reasons that we started this podcast, because in this particular space or place in the United States, you don't get the sense of the necessity or the real support. What am I trying to say? I just didn't get it. I just didn't get this importance of being a female and what all of that was about. I don't know about anybody else. It's open for discussion. How did you feel about it? How did any of you, did you get those impressions, ladies?
I didn't at all. I didn't know much about Africa except what I saw on the movies or on TV. So you know what that was about.
Yeah.
Well, what about The Woman King, that movie that came out
Oh,
this year?
that was a real eye opener. That was on the money.
Yeah, I went to see it the night it came out because I was just so happy to see that they had put this reality on screen. And what I even have a friend who saw the movie, enjoyed the movie, and said, but that's not real, though. I guess in his mind it was like a Marvel universe or something. And I said, no, that's how it really was. These women were the army of the king of Dahomey. They were his personal army. They had male regiments as well.
Totally.
But the females were the ones who guarded him. And because of their training, there are lots of wars apparently where they put those women in the front when they were attacking other places, attacking like the Yoruba kingdom of Oyo. Those women were in the front. So anyway, that was, to see that on screen, eye-opening to me too, because I had only read about it in books and I had read descriptions of it, but to see it depicted with real people was, I just loved it.
Yeah.
I think that movie kind of opened things up, because I saw a documentary that talked about a group of African women who were warriors and they fought against the British. Of course, with the British and their weapons, they couldn't win that one, but they were renowned.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Bonnie?
I appreciate, Lynda, a couple of things that you said, because I think we are so wrapped up because right now life is so virtual. So there's just all of these and in some ways that's also amazing because we have such a wide collection of history to immerse. I have so much resources to immerse myself in. All of these storylines and point of views, they're so available. And so there's the video fantasy, and then there's the reality. And the reality is that whether you're a man or a woman, you have equal access to wealth. And that these women run the run the markets is
for local produce primarily.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's I think sometimes not a thing that people get in their minds, what's actually happening here, because sometimes we're so down in the weeds and we're into the day to day. Like, I'm just going to the market to do what I'm doing, or I'm going to the market to sell what I'm selling. And if we dial it back a bit and get like the vision of like, wow, together, there's so much power. There's so much that's happening just in that marketplace that women are running. So, big ups to Beyonce's song, Who Runs the World. And so, I can't believe I said that.
Yes, it's an undercover job. You know what I'm saying? I mean, at one, they tried to make us believe that we didn't have that. To me, especially here in this country, is about, okay. When we went to work because we had to, but still.
But I want to say something radical, because part of participating in this conversation is breaking the cycles.
That's very true.
And that when we keep saying they say to us, then I say, it's now my time to say to me, or what am I going to be saying to, I have nieces. What am I saying to them? What am I saying to other? So there is this transformational calling, like it's a call for transformation in the conversation of what it is to be woman, to be feminine, to be female.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you said is like in the societies where they take on, if you say something against one woman, you're saying it to all women. And then I find myself being like who I am representing is that what would it be like for me that I walk around like that I'm representing everyone. There are things I know already that I would reorganize in how I live my life, in how I present myself, in how I speak. If I really every day came from that place of like, I belong to this bigger collective
of women.
What I think we could theoretically do going forward is have more like manhood training and womanhood training and rites of passage. Some communities do that, have done that. Some of them had them and they kind of fell off. But I think that would be for us at a later, older generation to think about trying to institute those, whether it's in a community center or church, to have rites of passage. And in the rites of passage training for, the kids that are like 11, 12, just coming into puberty, for us to talk to them at that age about cultural issues, ways things used to be, how things could theoretically be in the future. But I think that's certainly part of the problem that's going on now. And nobody trains these kids.
Yes.
To do in terms of what's appropriate, what's better, what might work better for their families. It's just nobody trains them. They just do whatever.
Yeah.
I want to say two things and then I'm going to pass it on. But the one thing is I can see now that there's a lot for me to learn about African culture that's so beautiful, and that we don't get to it's like you don't really get the full taste and flavor of that from here. And because mostly like when I'm watching African movies, it's something my aunt really loves to watch. Their storyline is like all the same. It's about a man, it's about a woman, it's about money, and then eventually somebody's going to be cheating on somebody else. And I'm just like, seriously, is that when you crystallize life, it's really just about some sexual relationship and whether the person's going to cheat on you or not?
Well, the soap operas, the African soap operas, and most of those are from Nigeria. You talking about those?
Yes.
What African movies that people watch for entertainment.
That's entertainment.
For a lot of people.
I
flew to Africa once on Nigerian Airways. And how if you take a Delta flight to Europe or something, they'll have all these movies. I took the Nigerian Airways flight, and you know what they had? African movies. All the movies were African movies. They were all so it's like classic this and the classic ones like that. But yeah, I was like, that's right. They have hundreds of their own movies. But anyway, people are mostly about going to school, going to work, taking care of their children.
So and then that brings, there's a little
That's
pause.
People they're doing their everyday lives for the most part.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My internet's sometimes goes in and out a little bit. I apologize.
Oh.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
All right. So that takes me to, our conversation or our exploration that we're in, which is about God and the divine. Leslie, do we want to?
Yeah. The aspects of God. Did you find, I know you said that some of those people, the chieftains, they had these spiritual things that they would do. And in worshiping the feminine part or the divine part, was that ever part of any of those rituals? I mean, the whole system seemed to me, from what you were saying, is about a partnership, because there were chiefs and there were chief women. So there was a partnership within the village.
Well, that's true. I mean, if you're talking about the places where they have a king and a queen mother, this dual, a paired authority structure in the town. That's true. But we can talk about more specifically religion now. I thought I did want to mention, for example, how many African societies do have their indigenous tradition has female deities. Christianity has come along and kind of undermined those female deities that were part of their culture forever. So some of them have had a chance to either re-establish or space has been made for them. But certainly, like, for example, Yoruba religion that has female deities in it, like Oshun and Oya, they are the female deities within their whole pantheon of deities. So, and it's not in that pantheon of deities, Oshun, Oya, they are in charge of things like one is in charge of the waters of rivers, fresh water, and one is the deity that's in charge of ocean water. So neither one of these deities are specifically in charge of women's affairs, unlike the queen mothers, who are in charge of women's affairs. And women are like 50 or 51% of the population, so that's like, okay, they're in charge of the women. But anyway, Oshun and Oya are in charge of these huge natural forces, like of water. And so when you're honoring Oshun, you're honoring her through your own appreciation and understanding of rain and rivers. That's pretty big. Yeah, of course, you've got Shango in the Yoruba structure, who's the god of thunder and lightning. So yes, people are afraid of the possible destructive power of lightning. So there's some sense of how Shango is the master, if you will, of really big, powerful, destructive forces. Then you've got like Ogun, who's considered to be the god of war and of metal and iron. So anyway, in this Yoruba pantheon, you've got deities that oversee different aspects of human life. And then the Dahomey indigenous structure has Mawu and Lisa. One's male, one is female. And they are considered to have, between the two of them, created human beings, created the world. And you have to pray to, depending on what you need or what you want, you could pray to Mawu or you could pray to Lisa or both of them. So anyway, I do want to bring in, yes, that most African indigenous religions have an automatic place for the female energy, the female deity, and the importance of the female in the creative process of human beings. It's there. It's part of their heritage. Yes. I don't know if any of you have read Things Fall Apart. A lot of high schools require the reading of Things Fall Apart. It's a small novel by Chinua Achebe. Anyway, that's Igbo. And the Igbo people, apparently their main important deity was of the earth. And she was conceived the earth was conceived of as female, as a woman with a name.
Yeah.
So anyway, and yes, as we've discussed, Christianity does not, at least in the way it's usually presented to us, have a female component automatically in it. We've talked about the fact that, okay, the Catholics seem to have a place for the Virgin Mary, and you can pray to the Virgin Mary for things. But as to me, the fact that the Virgin Mary is partly deified because she had a virgin birth. She's never supposed to have had sex, or, well, later everybody knows she did because Jesus had brothers and sisters. But, just that fact that it's the virginity that kind of gives her the spiritual power, the virgin part. They always, she's not just Mary, she's the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
So, and the nuns, who are the closest things they have in the Catholic religion of women who are servants of God directly, they're all supposed to be celibate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's part of that's supposed to be giving them a certain kind of spiritual power, that they're celibate. So even when the feminine is introduced within the Christian structure, it's not with the kind of energy that we've been talking about that comes from the sexual power that women have within them and their ability to create life because of having sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not part of the Christian structure of
At all.
the feminine
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
No.
So getting back to what this podcast is really about is a education for a lot more of us in this country to take a look at the values that we have for women and try to start to rearrange them. So to that end, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions because we've all gone through these questions before. So I know that you know so much more because of your experiences, but some of these questions could be, you could look at it from how you grew up and what you were taught. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, who taught you about God and what did they teach you about God?
Well, I did go to Sunday school from the time I was little, and we had to read aspects of the Bible, and certainly and I went to church with my mom from as early as I can remember, reading the hymns. And so early on, I learned the Lord's Prayer, Our Father, and that's another thing, that it was very male centric. With Our Father who art in heaven, how it was all like the Blessed Father who's looking down on you. Now, I had a father in my home that I loved, and he was very protective and everything. So that was like, okay, so God is like a father. God is like daddy. Okay, that's not bad. So it was positive. I mean, and the churches that my mom took me to and that we went to, they were not heavy into like hell, sin. And the church I go to now is not into that either. So yeah, not me. I'm not, I don't know if anybody else is Pentecostal, but I problems with the Pentecostal and the Baptist. But anyway, but then going to Sunday school, for me, a lot of what I read in the Bible, first of all, the Bible was so contradictory, it seems to me. And, things about it like, that doesn't make any sense. How can this be and that be? So in my own reading of the Bible, I had to try to make sense of it and could see clearly that this Bible was written by human beings for their own purposes. I never thought of the Bible as God's word directly to people. I didn't see it that way. The 10 Commandments, honor thy father and thy mother. That I like that one. Then like the rest of it, like don't covet your neighbor's wife. I'm like, okay, suppose you're the wife. Are you not allowed to covet your husband's friend? I mean, why is it only that the men are, I didn't get that either.
Why was it only addressed to men? Yeah, wow.
Yeah, right. It's like only the men have things that they have to do. What about the women? Anyway, so you're asking me about but at the same time, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to the point that there was a lot about going to church and talking about issues like infinity, always, forever, that I found were very freeing of my mind to like philosophical concepts to try to grasp that kind of thing, that God is there forever and has always been there. What does that mean? So I think that part of religion and church was useful for merely giving an idea of like the vastness of what the human mind can imagine or think of or conceptualize, if you will. So that part of religion I found very helpful.
We have had an amazing conversation, so many wonderful pieces of information. Please stick with us. We're not done. There's more. Thank you for coming. Say good night, everybody, or good morning.
Good night.